Hi, welcome back to another Terranscapes video. Today we're going to take a look at the laser test cuts that I've received, and for me, the only way I can feel confident about doing these designs was to finally drill down and take a really in-depth look at how the laser beam is actually removing material, how it's passing, and how that's affecting material around it. So basically, how tight a tolerance can I cut without the whole thing just falling apart? So I went into some real detail in my own mind and mapped out a bunch of things to try to get a full comprehension of it. And so that's kind of where I started, and so that's where I'm going to start with you, and I'm going to walk you through sort of how I arrived at where I am now. So before we jump over to the computer, I just want to mention I have a notable mention at the end of the video, so hopefully you'll stick around for that. So let's take a look at the test cuts, and I'll show you where I'm at. Okay, so really the start begins with this large window that I had designed early on. And as you can see, lots of very thin details. And when that was cut, it looked like this. Now this is a photo of the piece, and I've color enhanced it and shrunk it to the size that would match the original. And what you can see, obviously, is that a lot of it fell out. You know, a lot of the bits, and let's keep them both in frame so you can kind of see the comparison. You know, a lot of the leaves fell out, and a lot of the trim down here, and of course the little circle up here. So what I did then is I took this image and I took the original image design and I overlaid it so that I could then see better what was missing, what happened, and where. So it becomes pretty apparent that you can see where the thin areas really got nipped off. So this gave me the starting point to say, okay, there's a minimum thickness that has to be preserved, and I need to determine what that minimum thickness is. So I then took one of the pieces that was sent to me by Charlie just as a, you know, like a demonstration piece, and I put it into Inkscape so that I could map out these thin areas and see how thin is this, how did he get this. There's a little piece broken off here, so what's going on there, what's the minimums and the maximums. So I did that, and then I went to Mike's Thinky Town. Let's call it that, because I really needed to get into this piece by piece by piece, area by area, point by point, to try to get a sense of what has been shown to me that can be done, what happened, and why do I think it's happening, and trying to understand that would then lend me the ability to control that aspect. So I'm not going to read all of this to you. If you want to print screen it or pause, you can. But what I did first, actually, real quick, is I identified these holes. I was informed that the beam width is 2 millimeters. So I started to think about, well, how can you cut a 1 millimeter hole then? That was confusing. And here, this is a like a window that was cut out, and its frame, a little jumpy there with my keys, and the width on this is you know, maybe, you know, a 0.5 millimeter wide. So how's that being cut if the beam is wider than that? And then it occurred to me that it may be the result of the way the beam is traveling as well as its intensity. So if the beam has a, you know, a sort of a fuzzy pattern, right, because it's focused more in the interior, so the heat intensity is lower on the outside, And as the beam travels, the center is going to get the longest exposure, and at the edges, it's going to barely be, heated by the beam because it's only getting this very small contact point as it passes through. That might explain a lot of the cuts that I'm seeing and why it is leaving thin areas that I was not thinking would be possible. So then what I did is I went in and I took a look at my cut and my design that I was showing you earlier, and I started to pick out the areas where it was retained and how wide are those. Then I decided to check to see if I'm thinking about the way the beam travels, and if you think about it as, like, say, starting here, right? It's going to follow the edge of this line, and then it's going to come up this way, and then it's going to wrap back around the leaf like that. So that path was kind of showing me, like for here, there's an overlap, right? It's passing through this area twice. Here, it's getting very close on both sides. So I started thinking about that. Also, trying to get a sense of how much material was removed. Now, it's a little tricky from photo because the photos include shadows and an angle, right? It's never a perfectly straight-on shot. And it looked like about a quarter of a millimeter or so is being removed. Based on my new understanding, I was thinking, okay, if I take into account what is being preserved and what it was originally, then I can modify my original design by expanding it to give me a larger material so that when some of it is removed, right, more is retained. But also to recognize there's a minimum spacing that I should take into account, because when the beam passes through, if the spacing is too narrow, when it comes back through on the other side, it's in effect recutting the first pass again. So there's a distance that needs to be preserved. But again, it's not the full 2 millimeters because there's that fringe that isn't really cut because of the circular pattern of the beam. Now, okay, so if you're saying, I don't think he gets it quite yet, I didn't, but I'm getting closer. So after thinking about it a little bit more, first of all, I did these in Photoshop. Stupid. I could have done them in Inkscape and made this pattern so much quicker. I don't know. The right tool for the right job makes your job easier. Anyway, I wanted to map what the beam is doing more closely and also represent the intensity of the beam graphically a little bit better. So what I did is I figured if the beam is unfocused at the perimeter, which is possible, right, because its foci, I believe that's correct, is going to be a very small point, and the focus will diminish as it gets further away from that, I think. Or the beam intensity in terms of its cutting power is still going to follow this kind of a intensity range, since as it's traveling, right, we're going to pass through the center, which is going to represent the hottest path. And if you're passing through on this side, right, you're not really getting into the hottest section because you're only touching the beam for a smaller amount of time, and vice versa, and likewise here. So using that, what I did is I decided to actually map the beam as the pulses are laid down. And the reason I did that is that I wanted to see how this sort of heat mapping is overlapping itself. Because clearly, right, if the beam is 2 millimeters wide and it's following the line, this isn't all destroyed, right? But that's because it's not being heated as much, and vice versa. But when it makes this corner and it comes back, this area is getting heated quite a bit because you're close to 3 points, for instance, rather than just one, right? This point is actually being heated by both of these points as well, if that makes sense. So I decided to think about that and then map it on an interior circle. And what I noticed is that there starts to be this opacity showing up because there are so many layers being stacked. And that's what gave me the clue to understanding how material is being removed in excess of what I want. As the beam drawing here, as you see it, as my image of the beam, and I'm laying them down, as the opacity increases, you can see now it's getting hard to see these lines. Well, that models the removal of the leaf pretty well. And then if I map it on both sides of this is, and here's the leaf. If you look, I mean, what's going on in here? This is gone. This is all blocked out by my image, which represents why it's being removed. And here you can see with the leaf, it's coming around, right? And this is making this pinch point, getting, a much higher degree of heating, and still, the leaf is there, but not. Even if the leaf survives, it won't be attached, right? And so you can see, right, as I mapped that, right, this area got fried, this leaf barely holding on, this area very damaged. I'm going to call it damaged because it's less there than I wanted. So that finally gave me the insight I needed to know how to map future designs. So some of these images should look familiar to you if you've been following this project. And some of them represent some areas of substantial concern in terms of getting them cut without them being destroyed in the process. What I discovered in trying to think about this is I'm making some assumptions here based on all the numbers I've seen in terms of my measurements of the drawings, the designs before, and then trying to measure the resulting cuts afterwards that were in those photos, right, when I did that overlay. It seemed like a single pass will remove about 0.3 millimeters, because I was estimating it at 0.25, right? So let's be on the safe side, which means I need a minimum thickness of about 1.5 millimeters, because that's going to leave about 0.8 remaining, and that seemed to be about the thinnest material present on any of the cuts I was looking at. I actually think I can go a little bit tighter than that, but this was where I was at for this designing phase. And I need to space things apart by 1.5 millimeters to make sure that they aren't being double heated, if you get what I'm saying there. You might be wondering what these are. If you're not wondering, I'm going to point them out. These are my measuring templates. These are what I'm using to space things, so I can put this in between two, sections of leaves and see, because this is 1.5 millimeters, and this is my super small measuring tool, so that I can actually get a sense of how wide something has to be to leave a tip, right? If each of these is 0.3 millimeters, and this would be then the smallest amount of material that would survive a ways back from the actual tip, right? Because as it rounds the corner, it's going to burn off the tip. But at least I know at this point that would be preserved. So yeah, so I'm working in tenths of a millimeters now. These are tenths. And that is the level of granularity I feel I need to really get the tightest cuts I can achieve. But I discovered that in Inkscape, you can use dynamic offset to shrink something in a proportional way. So I'm not going to get into it too much because this isn't about Inkscape, but just to show you what I mean, let's take this one here. So this was big. This was big. If I dynamically offset it, it's going to give me a little marker to move. And in this case, I'm going to move it, what is this? This would be, let's say I moved it 0.4. All right, and then we look back out. That would be the resulting shape. And you can see here, right, some areas would just get, lopped off. Now 0.4 is too much. 0.3 is what I'm thinking, but it gave me a tool to be able to try to forecast how the resulting cuts would look. This was super helpful. So these were some of the pieces I laid out. I altered the thickness and size of some of them. Here is the balcony arch, and you can see that I've altered them into different configurations to see if they could be cut. And then here are my expected cuts, right? So H2, which is over here, I think that's still in frame, right? That doesn't look like it's going to cut very well, right? But I just wanted to take a look at that and see. H3 looks like it's going to cut well, and importantly, here's the bracket for the balcony on the tower and the buildings actually, and that has been a concern, but you can see here that I'm expecting to be able to preserve some of the cuts quite well. One thing that's been bothering me as I've been designing them, and now that I have the test cuts, I'm not quite as concerned about it, is these, I don't know, sort of like tabs that connect the pieces. It's because, again, the beam doesn't make a crisp angle because as it comes in and comes back out, right, it's overheating an area, so the area widens up. And I thought, oh God, that's not going to look good. I played around for a long time trying to understand if this could be fixed and improved. It cannot. But of course, for me, I spent too much time trying to fix it when it probably didn't need to be fixed. And we can take a look at some of the final results here. So I'm only going to show one piece mapped out. Oh, well, all right. Here's, before we actually go into that detail, so here's the balcony piece. This was the H3, and nice. Look at that, looks great. I'm very happy with that. These tab effects are still present, but not too bad. Not too bad. I think it's okay. And of course, at this scale and at the distance people will be looking at, it's one of the factors of doing this kind of cutting, and I'm happy with that. Here is my, let's see here, I'll just move, whoop, wrong tool. Here I'm just gonna, oh, for goodness sakes. Can I get rid of the grouping? Okay. This is my forecasted cut using a 0.3 millimeter offset. And when you look, actually more, so I've sized this as close as I can. So this is probably not 100% accurate, but it's pretty close. You can see some of the material is remaining beyond what my offset was. I would expect it to match exactly. And then I tried it instead at a 0.2 offset, and oh, that looks solid. Look at that. That looks great. That's a perfect match. So now I'm under the impression that I can make, oh, wait a minute. I just wanted to take that off. Can I just do? All right. Some reason, yeah, Inkscape gets a little weird sometimes. Moving on, because I'm already going probably a little long. So anyway, the 0.2 offset looks like a fantastic match. And so that actually shows me that I could probably even go a little smaller with some details, knowing that less material is going to be removed. This was a window that's 2 layers, so I wanted to see how the window inset would look. And one of the things I've just recently decided is that I need to cut these frames in a thinner material than the initial base layer, because the frame looks a little heavy, and it'd be nice if it was a little lighter than the sort of inside wall, right? Varying thicknesses are going to look a little bit more interesting, a little bit more realistic, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, there's my madness. This took a tremendous amount of time to set up, but I felt like I really needed to go through this process and understand, and now I do. And I feel like I can put together any design I want and know exactly what I'm going to get, or very, very close once it gets cut. So that's a milestone. It's a big one, and you're going to start seeing some very different work come out now as a result of that. So there you go. This is my exploration into my laser cutting testing and analysis, and we should wrap it up. So that gives you a look at the madness I have been embarking on and trying to figure out all of this designing process so that I can tweak it as much as I can to get the smallest details I can. So I feel pretty positive about the work. I think maybe it was a little much in some areas, but it's the way my mind works, and I just really needed to spell it out like that and double check with Charlie, who's the gentleman who's doing the cutting for me, and show him that and say, do I have this right? And now I believe I do. So that's a big moment, because now I can actually freely design without wondering how it's going to look when it gets cut, and that's reassuring. Also wanted to mention, did I mention something before? I don't know if that's grammatically correct. I would like to mention, I have really been not watching a lot of YouTube videos lately, partly because of just things that have been going on. So if I used to comment on your videos a lot and I'm not now, don't take offense. I'm still there, and I'm still trying to check out from here and there from time to time. So I am still there in the virtual YouTube world as an observer. I don't know. Anyway, I feel like I've been quiet on a lot of channels. And I did drop in to a channel that I haven't checked out in a while, and that's my notable mention. And it is Custom Terrain's channel, and he recently produced a gaming mat. He had printed a test mat based on terrain that he had made, like a dwarven underground cavern stronghold. I'm sure he has a better name for it. And the awesome thing about it is that because it's a three-dimensional terrain piece, obviously, but he has, levels built into the board. Those levels produced a fantastic three-dimensional feel. When you look at the mat, it's like you do feel like you're looking below the table into the cavern. So really liked it. I thought it was pretty unusual. I don't think I've seen a mat capture that effect before. So I'll put a link in the description to his video on that, so you can check it out. It's worth a look. I'm curious to see where he goes with that. And next video is likely to be a orc board update. So I've done a lot of work there. So hopefully you will come back and see that video, because I will be back soon with another Terranscapes video. Hi, welcome back to another Terranscapes video. Today we are going, oh man, so goes a one take. That take, not good, not bad, not good.